Check 1, 2, 3, 4. Check 1, 2.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Is this working? I'm glad to be here with you today. It's not working. Now it's working. All right. Sheila's a wonder worker. So I am grateful to be here with you this morning and have really enjoyed this series on healing stories in the Bible. Healing is a path to wholeness. Wholeness as a path to holiness. And this week we are very fortunate to have Craig Cecil, and I'll say more about Craig's background. He'll say more than I will about his background. And to let you know, next week what we will have, so we have two left in the series. And next week, John Burris and Catherine Owens and I are going to give you an update, kind of a state of the state on this Center for Spirituality and Wholeness that we asked for some feedback from you a couple of weeks ago, and just to let you know where we're heading with that. And then the week after that, we're really fortunate to have Adam Bucko, who will be here from New York City, I don't know what he's talking about. I kind of don't care. I'm just glad he's here. So he's a busy boy, and he's going to be here with us on the 17th. He'll be with Contemplative Outreach on the 16th. And you've heard me preach about him. We're reading a book about that he wrote, and his work is really about social justice in contemplative life. And he's walking the walk in the way he lives his life. But today we are really fortunate to have Craig Cecil. I first met Craig when we were at All Saints, and I was the interim, and that's when Craig and Maria were there. But we're fortunate to have you all here with your extended family. And Craig has an incredible background and life experience to talk about healing in the body. I know that he is a triathlete, and he trains triathletes. So I wish I met him 20 years ago when I thought I could do that. But we're glad you're here now. I know, and he'll go, you can still do it. I know he will. But, no, I can't. Yeah, I know. Craig is also a spiritual director, and we have a group that meets here regularly on interspiritual spirituality, and Craig is involved with that as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Craig and let him go, and if you could fill out the cracks that I missed, I would appreciate it. Okay. But thank you so much for being with us, Craig.
Thank you. I'm just going to set this down somewhere.
Oh, my bad.
Okay.
You don't need it.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. When Mary B. asked me to do this, my first question was, why me? And actually, in preparing this, I sorted some of that out, because this is our path. Our wholeness is a path to holiness, but we're talking about the physical body now. And as I go through these few slides that I have in this presentation, you'll see the direction that we go in when we talk about the physical body and holiness. And each one of these slides, I realized I could do a complete lecture on. I mean, that's how much depth there is in this topic. So I will get started. Now, the meaning behind this particular picture here is nothing other than it calms me down when I look at it. But it is, you feel the holiness coming out of it, and I think that's what we want. Okay, why me? Well, we look at this and we have currently, and I say that currently, I'm a spiritual director and also a grief companion. And that will be so-called certified this afternoon when I finally finish the final paper due from the class. I'm executive director of the Southeast Interspiritual Sanctuary, home of the second Saturday meeting, which we are honored to be able to do here on the second Saturday of each month. And what we do in that is we bring in, it's mostly videos, quite often it's a speaker of different faith traditions that are teaching us about the similarities and the differences of the different traditions. And the goal for me is to learn to honor the differences and celebrate the similarities, which, because there's so much strife in the world. It's a pretty emotional topic. I'm also I've started this group, so I've intercontemplative group formation, which has to do with the 11th step of 12-step traditions, sought through prayer and meditation to have a closer contact with God. Now we get into the, say, left side of the brain. I'm on the finance committee for the board for the Center of Action and Contemplation. And I've been on that since January of 2018. I'm also on the executive committee, and I'm chair of the finance committee for the Foundry Ministries in Bessemer, and I was CFO for that for 5 years, about 10 years ago. I'm also a triathlete coach. So I coach triathletes all over the world. It's been a blessing to do that, and I work with, and it usually, if the first two or three there are the right side of the brain, next couple are the left side, and it all comes together with coaching triathletes, where we talk about bringing the science and the art of coaching to help people achieve their goals. That is extremely rewarding, to see somebody who maybe can't swim, can't bike, or can't run, occasionally can't do all three. In 2 or 3 years, I have them do an Ironman race. And my qualifications for this part of my life, because I have another 30 years of corporate life filled with all other degrees in finance and marketing and everything else. But this part of my life is in 2018, I started with Living School at the Center for Action and Contemplation, and was part of the 2020 cohort. Discovered spiritual direction. Since then, I've got a certificate in spiritual direction from the Spiritual Guiding Training Institute, and I found a school that focused on inner spiritual direction and bringing in all the faith traditions to one. My personal faith is still through Christ. There's no denying that, but I do recognize and honor the different traditions. And then I got my Doctor of Ministry in the same area in Graduate Theological Foundation. And for the coaching and everything, I am a national champion triathlete and duathlete in 2015. I was fortunate to have the support of my family and train while raising 4 kids, and it was quite a journey for about 17 years. Let's see. I will discuss the logos later. We have the hummingbird on the left, and of course, it's climbing a mountain, measured performance, peak performance for my coaching logo. So, not knowing what today's sermon was going to be, when my friend Danielle, who's a rector up in the Tri-Cities area, I reached out to her over Christmas after Mary B had talked to me, and I said, you know my story. She's been on my spiritual journey with me for 5 years now, and I'm blessed to have her. I said, can you send me something that would talk about the destruction of the body? Destruction of the temple, because that's where we're heading with this discussion. Physical body, spiritual temple. And so she sends me this. And I was, so I'm sitting here, and I did maybe cut out too much trying to make it brief. And prepare yourselves now, because we are going to talk about how we've mistreated this home. But so then I opened the bulletin today and, look at the sermon and listen to John, and I'm going, well, he could have come up here and spoke about this part for me. But the lines that stood out the most to me in this is stop making... Okay. Well, almost made. Stop making my Father's house a marketplace. Zeal for your house will consume me. Okay, so, and then they said, what sign can you show us for doing this? Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. But it goes on to say, but he was speaking of the temple of his body in the disbelief. So, this is where I get emotional. The emotional part has to do with my celebration of my relationship with God. I went through, and several of my friends from Protective Life are here. Before I started at Protective Life, many years ago, I was a drug addict and an alcoholic, and pretty much close to being on the streets. And that lasted for 17 years. So all I can say is that I pretty much destroyed the temple, and I made my body a marketplace. And it was probably for the last couple of years, I wasn't sure if I was going to live. And actually, death would have been the satisfaction to live in that kind of torment. So one day I decided to ask for help. And a few months later, I started praying to a God I did not believe in any longer, and prayed for a sign. And I said, and my joke with him, because I joke with God every day, he laughs at me every day. But I prayed to him and I said, my best thinking got me here. And you expect me to trust my thinking to believe that you exist. So I asked for a sign, and he gave me one. And since then, as sure as I was that he didn't exist before, I was sure that God existed after that. And there's no doubt. And I smile at people today who want to say, how, where in the Bible can you justify, or can you describe, can you know for sure that God exists? And I goes, I don't have to. I can no longer argue about that, because I just know. And it's that simple. But the fact is, when I came out of that, I had destroyed the temple. I didn't even know until then that God was inside me. I didn't know until then that he was in my heart. So over the years after that, I started running. Now we're talking in my mid-30s. Started doing triathlons when I was, 48 or 49. Became a coach a few years later. Found my calling to be coaching and teaching, and not to be corporate finance and investments. So what I tried to do by sharing you my story is not only let you know me, but to really make it okay for you to discuss at your tables things that you may have done or would like to change about yourself to make your temple a better place for God. And so by telling you a story of drugs and alcohol, I'm hoping I've lowered the bar here enough that maybe if you have an issue with eating chocolate or something, you can open up and share with the people at your table. So I'd like you to take 5 minutes to just maybe sharing something in your lives with each other. And I will call on the tables after that, a couple of them to say. But it doesn't have to be anything as deep as what I went into.
similar story. We're covering alcoholics many, many, many years.
Thank you. Just shaking a little bit. Thanks.
I never hit five. Halfway down the program, they say, what that was, for a long time. Too much coffee. I don't want to. I just couldn't do it.
Okay. We should try to wrap up the stories a little bit. Let me have that mic. Yeah.
Oh, it could be six. I'm not gonna fix this.
Thank you.
All of a sudden, whole new.
Excuse me? I was really wondering if I had to get anybody to talk about this part of the discussion. So, first of all, before I call on a table, is there anybody here, any table or someone at a table that'd like to just offer what they've been talking about? And I will call on you. Okay. I'm going to call on my friend here with the, see if this table back here, does anybody here have something to share that they could share a little bit? Is this too vulnerable?
No, I mean, I can share mine.
Okay.
Jan's is a better story though. but she's not a storyteller. You guys, I don't think it's on. No.
Turn it on.
There you go. All right, now. Dark chocolate. And it's one of those things that it's not devilishly a hold of my life in the way that alcohol or drugs could be, but it's there. I had to be cautious about allowing it in my pantry because, of course, if it comes in the pantry, then it has to leave in my mouth. And so probably better to not do that, although Ms. Tina has shared that dark chocolate is better for you than milk chocolate, so I'm going to bear that in mind.
Okay.
Anything else?
Does anybody else want to say? Here we go. Right here. Good.
Our discussion was largely about just wear and tear.
Mm-hmm.
I know some of the people in the Bible lived for a long, long time. I don't know if they had bad ankles or bad hips or any of those things. And I guess maybe if we lived a perfect life, maybe we would be healthy till the very end. But I'd love some perspective on that.
Well, our lives today are consumed with sitting in chairs, sometimes 6 to 8, 10 hours a day. And they weren't doing that back then. And they weren't staring at screens anywhere from 2 feet to 8 feet across the room all the time. And I'm sure they had a lot to do with it. So that means what I've found in training and working with athletes is that we have to spend more time out there. And it's good for them. They feel better afterwards. And you can sense it. When I coach somebody up, they have more confidence than when they started with me. And these people come to me and said, I don't think I can do it. And I'll point out to them, I've coached one girl one time for a young lady for about 3 years. And I had to point out to her that she could never do, she told me in high school she wasn't athletic at all and couldn't do anything. And so here she is, she was turning 40 and had done an Ironman and a bunch of other races. And I said, you're probably the top athlete from your graduating class. So we have to change what we're doing. And it's important that we understand why to make this work. And so this next slide, so you completely understand. And I'm sure that a lot of the people in this group here do this, but this is how important it is and how universal this thought is about how important our body is. And from the Christian perspective, in Corinthians 3:16, do you know that you yourselves are God's temple and that God's Spirit lives in you? For God's temple is sacred. And you are that temple. In the Hebrew perspective, and it's funny, the first 300 years of our church, we were very heart-centered in community. It wasn't until later on that we became so hierarchical and patriarchal with the God sort of removed from us. But the Old Testament, you don't really find any Hebrew, you don't find any, Jewish tradition of God being within. He was that patriarchal God. But it turns out all three of their words for soul have to do with breath. And nephesh is, and I can't pronounce these correctly, just to let you know. A rabbi gave them to me, and I had to say, would you please spell them for me? Means trachea, ruach, air, wind, and neshama, breath. And in Psalms 20:27, the human spirit, which is the breath, is God's lamp. Psalm 150, every breath, is praise to Yah or Yahweh. So in Islam, they also had the patriarchal God, But there's a different interpretation by some of the factions of Islam, just like we have the factions of Christianity and factions of Judaism and the factions of Hinduism. But, it's funny, they believe in this patriarchal God that's further out or further away, some of them do, but the word heart is mentioned 132 times in the Quran. It's for a reason it's there. And the Sufis, which are a branch, and many of the other branches do consider this, Allah came to Muhammad in a dream and said that there's nothing on earth that is large enough to contain me. And there's nothing in the heavens that are large. I don't know, I'm eventually going to be able to talk about God without getting emotional. Maybe I shouldn't hope for that. There's nothing in the heavens large enough to contain me. The only place that's large enough to contain me is in your heart. So that made so much sense. And then I looked up this thing here because somebody had mentioned it to me, and it's not up there, but by Thich Nhat Hanh and Living Buddha, Living Christ. It says, Jesus is not only our Lord, but he is also our Father, our teacher, our brother, and our self. The only place we can touch Jesus in the kingdom of God is within us. So those are his words, a Buddhist. So this is a universal thought. So if this is true, hang on one second. I've got too many machines going here. If this is true, it is very important for us to take care of it. To take care of ourselves. It's sort of like, I was smiling when I was thinking about this the other day. If we were having somebody come over to the house that was just relatively important to us, or we wanted to slightly impress, we would clean up the house. We would make sure the dishes are put away. Maybe not in my house. But it would be presentable. We would want to make a good impression. And yet we sit around and quite often don't take care of our body, and who could be more important to have as a guest than God? So just think about that when you're not taking care of yourself. And some of the things I was thinking of, that, like I love good detective spy-like shows. Especially these new 8-part series you can find on different things on YouTube. But about the third or fourth one, they developed this really good story, and then all of a sudden they're going to kill 15 people in the 6th segment or something. And I'm going, I can't watch that. It hurts me inside. It kills something in me inside. And so I either stop watching it or I fast forward through it or something like that. But there are ways that we need to take care of ourselves that keeps this house holy. And it doesn't mean that I can't watch those films. I just got to, no, I cannot watch that stuff. But it does mean that I have to be careful of what I watch. This isn't a process of absolutes, like I can't do this or I can only do that. This is a process of growth, and getting closer to God and keeping that heart open. So what I'd like you to talk about now within your tables is things which you probably touched on in the last time, with things that you can change about yourself with time, not just give up for Lent, but change with time something to make your house cleaner, holier. Better to hold the most important guest we have. You didn't know you were going to get all these tears, did you?
Holy tears.
Yeah, holy tears. So we'll take another 5-minute break, and I'd like you to just discuss what can we change to make ourselves a better house for God. Oops.
Smoke no more kisses. Okay. I'm done. I thought it was. Her dad would reach for cigarettes long after he quit. When we had Ellen, they lived in their place, they had to visit, she said, you gotta go outside and smoke. Dad was out in the front porch smoking. Come on, wait, wait.
Okay, we shall we come back together here? Does anybody have anything to offer on this table? Yeah, here we go.
Is it on?
You have to press the button, I think.
Is it on? Oh.
Yeah.
I'm Callie. I have been working in a very high-stress job for like 3 years. I work in UAB in the Cancer Center, inpatient, really, really, really sick people. So a lot of mental and emotional and physical stress just wearing me down. I have a 1-year-old too. So I realized that while it was an important job, it was destroying my temple at the same time. So I had my last day at UAB on Friday, and I'm going to be using my skills to take care of cancer patients at Grandview, outpatient, so I can be more present for my family, mentally, physically, emotionally, and for my son. So I'm getting going. I start on Monday. That was a hard change. It took like 9 months for me to get the courage to change. So.
Fantastic.
You're going to be doing the same thing, but outpatient.
Oh.
That's great.
That's my daughter. Yeah. I didn't even pay her to say that. It was perfect. Anybody else? This table?
We were talking about stress here too.
Yeah.
So I think, I'm just saying that we had brought that up, and I think that's because just a minute ago I was asking, are we talking about, you know, the spiritual body? I mean,
Oh, the
body?
people at home can't hear you.
We were talking about, is it the healing or making the physical body or the spiritual body? And then we talked about, you know, physical, and I was just saying how stress can
can take a toll on you. And so it just kind of, I'm sure everybody in this room has got some level of stress, and any guidance that you can give. I know I used to be a runner, and when I did run, I always felt good, whether it's in endorphins or whatever it is, dopamine or something gets going in your body, it makes you feel better. And I think it helps you with your work and can help you with your relationship with God. So I think exercise is part of that. Maybe you can expand on I'm just curious about the physical side of it too. What does the exercise, how does it help your body, your brain, your cells, and everything else kind of help you with stress at work and everything else?
Okay. That's actually where I went when I was reviewing this and talking to people about how badly their spiritual life suffered while they were in stressful jobs and actually put their spiritual growth on hold for years. And it's like a circle. If you're stressed out, you're not spending any time with God and with the community that you need to be a part of, not just alone with God. But so you get stressed out, then you get sick physically. And you have one illness after another quite often, or recurring illness, the same illness over and over again. And so so it's a vicious cycle, but it is circular. And what I've found and what I strive for is balance, and I'm always slightly out of balance. This isn't perfect, I had to come to grips with the fact that trying to be perfect wasn't working out because then I was trying to be God. But he was allowing me to be human so I could go, circular motion. It's really hard for us to be human. We want to do everything just right. So a little bit of exercise, a little bit of time in prayer every day, a little bit of time in communion with other people, and all of a sudden you have this beautiful circle going on. And so I help people on their physical goals a lot. And I think spiritual direction brought that balance into my life because I knew I had more to share with them. I know I was one of the few coaches out there asking when people sign up for Ironman going, well, what's your faith like? And I go, why are you asking about relationship with God? And I'm going, because at about mile 100 on the bike with a full marathon to run, you're going to be asking somebody for some help. And we might as well develop this relationship now. And I'll joke with them about it once in a while, but it's true. They're going to reach that point where there's nowhere else to go but to turn to God. And so they have to be taking care of themselves. And it can get too extreme too. This right here, but in case we go too far, if you're training, if you're sitting there looking in the mirror at your six-pack abs because you decided to start working out all the time, and you're always concerned about your body shape, then it's gone too far. You're no longer doing it for the health reasons. But I want you to know we're all human, so we're all going to do that some. And so there's nothing to feel guilty about it as long as it doesn't become the goal. To keep me from becoming conceited, there was given me a thorn in my flesh, a messenger from Satan to torment me. In 2017, I was in second place in an Ironman 70.3 event up in New York. And I was so disgusted, this had happened 3 times that year, with being second that I quit and walked off the course. Now there are people, I didn't think about this for 6 weeks. I was just so mad. For 16 years, I just participated and had fun. Now I was good because I worked hard at it. And I was always on the podium, I was always having a great time, always smiling and laughing. And here it is, I'm walking off a course in second, because it's going to be my 3rd second in a row. About 6 weeks later, it dawned. Now this is at the same time I've started centering prayer here earlier that year. I just discovered Richard Rohr a few months before. And about 6 weeks later after this race, I looked around and I went, my God, everybody I know would do anything to be on the podium at one of these races. And I was walking off because I was second. I've never done a triathlon since. I said, I cannot do this for this reason. And then I got into the living school and my whole life started to change. So now I have taken up ultra running last year, 5 years later, but there's no racing for first. You walk all the hills. It drives me crazy. But we visit each other on the way up the hills. We find out where we're from and everything. You get to the top, you start running again. You do that for 34 miles, 8 hours. It's bananas. But I'm not competing with anybody anymore. I'm sharing my experience with those people around me. And so I can do that. The thorn in my side, it wasn't a messenger from Satan. It was God poking me, going, you start this centering prayer stuff, you start trying to get closer to me, you're not going to be real happy with the kind of person you've become. And so I changed. I had to change. So you have to keep it in perspective. The answer to your question, I think, is balance. My spiritual life is better if I'm thinking clearer. If I go out and run, I don't care about, like you, whether it's endorphins or not. I enjoy the fresh air. I enjoy, one of the things about my new hearing aids is I can hear all the birds again. I like doing that. And then now I share it with people. I'm not training alone anymore. And it's pretty wonderful. I even run with my wife. We have a much different pacing. So I wanted to get to this quickly because this, I think, is what our physical life, our physical journey, and our spiritual journey is like. And this is why I've picked the hummingbird. It can fly forward, backward, and even upside down. I mean, I think this is where Ken Wilber got his theory on spiral dynamics. Because there are times I'm upside down in my life. Spiritually, there are times I'm upside down and uncertain. Physically, I feel like I'm taking 2 steps back a lot of times. The hummingbird the spirit reminds us to bring diversity into our lives. People that are just, and we're all, children of God. But we know people who just work out too much and it's their life. And we know people you can also not talk to about anything outside the exact quote from the Bible. What the black words mean, not what the white means in between them, as I put it. So diversity helps. And then we'll feel like we float free of time. Then we will live longer with less stress. They remind us that life is rich. Who doesn't look at a hummingbird and just smile? You just sort of grin when you start to look at them, without knowing why. And so here it is. It's just important that we recognize where our home, the home that we've created inside us, that is God's home. That's where we find Him. And that's what we share with others. But we have to take care of that home, physically, emotionally, spiritually. By the way, I've touched on a lot of topics here, and I'm going to have to wrap this up. I've left out some of my business cards there. They make great good bookmarks. But if I've touched on anything you want to reach out to me about in recovery, addiction, training, coaching, spiritual direction, whatever, just send me an email. And I'll be glad to talk to you about it. By the way, I did just celebrate 40 years of sobriety. And I'm finding out there's a reason the 40 number is so big. I only spent 17 years in the desert. But this 40 number in the Bible is really significant. And so it feels good to have that much time of sobriety behind me. Thank you. Mm-hmm.